Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. If you've just tuned in, you missed out on quite an amazing discussion on resilience in the agricultural sector. However, not everything is lost because it's about to get heated. We don't play games at the Skills Development Summit. We under promise and we make sure that we over deliver. So, without wasting any further time, we are now about to embark on a panel discussion around the value of skills development and mentorship in partnership with the Moshabane Advisory Services. And this will be chaired and led by the facilitator, Miss Anastasia Moshabane, who's the group CEO of Moshabane Group. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Miss Anastasia Moshabane. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Tabang, for this opportunity. It's such a prestigious opportunity for us. And I mean, with the kind of panel that we have managed to put together, I believe that all the attendees will really get benefit from hearing from their expertise and also, what they have been doing in, in the area of skills development and mentorship. But because we host webinars every second Thursday morning at the Grill Room and Sushi Bar in Brooklyn, our tradition is to start with a poem, and I will start with that. It's about the man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that this place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And this was written by Theodore Roosevelt. I believe this is a very apt introduction, to the discussion that we will be having as a panel, because we are in the arena. We are moving forward. We are carrying battle scars, but we are not giving up. And as we grow and as we fail forward, we take those along with us that need those opportunities. So as you've introduced, I'm the group CEO of the Mashobane group of companies. Our companies consist of Mashobane AM Attorneys Incorporated, which is a specialist law firm, a boutique law firm only specializing in 5 areas of specialized law, one of them which is ICT and aviation law. We also have Mashobane Advisory Services that provides governance, expert governance services. And lastly, which is really my passion project, is the Mashobane Academy of Training and Mentorship. So just to tell you a little bit about my mentorship journey, I was introduced to mentorship 12 years ago by my current mentor, Michelle Carolis. I didn't know what mentorship meant, so I had to go check the dictionary before I actually had said yes. And I mean, what I got for the past 12 years is different from what any dictionary could ever have prepared me for. My promise to her was that I will always pay it forward, which is basically what this day is about. This is what led us to this moment here, where by keeping my promise to my mentor, I am able to pay it forward and take those along with me who would never get opportunities to work in these specialized areas. But not only that, but to find those people that people overlook. Our mentorship cuts across many, many areas. We don't only have lawyers, we've got CAs, we've got, struggling, students that are just trying to make it. One of my favorite mentees, if not that all of them are not my favorite, is Jack. He's a trolley porter by day, but he studied mechanical engineering. So if I had not looked at Jack and asked myself, there is a story behind this person, I would not have known this amazing human being that every day he pushes his trolleys quietly and at night he studies. And I believe that I've been put on this planet and on this, just here to make a difference in people's lives. And you'll hear that coming through from the panelists that we'll be discussing. They will be going more into detail about the practicalities of how they actually are applying their skills and also how their mentorship journey has led them to where they are, but in also giving pragmatic ideas and solutions of what we can do as a country. It's not time to be asking what the government can do for us. It's time for us to be saying, what can we as citizens do to help the government? And with that, I'd like to introduce my amazing panel. First up is Mr. Lungile Mabeke. He's the Managing Director of Bulumko, Corporate Law Advisors and Consultants. Dr. Pulani Molokwane, she's the founder of All Environ Pty Ltd. Yvette Hardy, National Director, ACITESH, South Africa, and Mr. Ellis Lavemba. And before I hand over to Yvette, I would like to say all protocol observed. Thank you for everybody that is attending. I know we are in the middle of load shedding, but from the bottom of my heart, you could be anywhere else, but you're here with us. Without further ado, Yvette, over to you.
Thanks so much, Anastasia. And I'm going to be sharing my screen while I talk. It's wonderful to be with you all today. I'm Yvette. I am the director of ACITESH South Africa, and my particular focus is the arts, is the performing arts in particular. And so I'm going to be talking about creative arts skills development and mentorship, and whether these can in fact provide the answers for 4IR readiness for South Africa's youth. Like Anastasia, I like to start with something creative. So I want to start with this very wonderful young woman. If you don't know her already, you should know her. Please look her up, Koleka Patuma. She's 28 years old. She's written a collection of poetry called Collective Amnesia, which has taken the world by storm. It's been translated into 6 languages now. She's also a theatre director, which is how I got to know her. And her poetry has really captured the zeitgeist of young Black women in our country. And this particular quote, "You owe your dreams your courage," is for me so pertinent in terms of the area of skills development and mentorship. This is in fact what we are trying to give the young people that we mentor or who we work with in terms of skills development. We're wanting to give them the courage to grab those dreams and to bring their courage to the context and circumstances that they're dealing with. And we know in South Africa that those circumstances can be really difficult. Right now, COVID has, of course, impacted so much on our young people. And in terms of the figures that have just come out around unemployment, we knew that things were bad. But in fact, in the first quarter of 2021, we have hit a new unfortunate high in terms of unemployment. And youth unemployment is now at a record high of 63.3%. So that is a very worrying context. The second very worrying aspect is our education system. We already had an education system which was in crisis pre-COVID, but now under COVID, we are seeing that this has worsened considerably. And the latest statistics are showing that the learning losses compared to the loss of school days is in fact 1 to 5. So in other words, for every day lost, 5 times that amount of learning has been lost. So this is very concerning. But I don't want us to be stuck in the negative, because I really believe that we do have answers. The third area of challenge is, of course, this new world that we are all already a part of, the fourth industrial revolution. And we know that it's not just coming, it has come. We are already working within, augmented realities, within the use of artificial intelligence, etc. And our young people, in order to survive and in order to be adaptable within this new environment where the workplace is changing all the time, need to be properly equipped. So what can the arts do in this respect? It's very interesting that in the report that went to the president from the 4IR Commission, in fact, the arts were identified as being central. That in terms of human capital development, STEAMy, so STEAMy is science, technology, engineering, arts at the heart of it, mathematics, innovation, and entrepreneurship, were identified as the most important areas for education. And another very important area, which is stressed over and over again in that report, is that the creative sector needs to be engaged in order to integrate skills into education as proposed within the report. The other area which is highlighted is how we need rapid skills interventions across a number of different sectors, so across educators, trainers, users, in order to reach everybody. And in fact, one of the focuses in the 4IR Commission's report is on early learning, so very young children, but across the entire learning spectrum. So the arts have been identified as very important. Why is this the case? I think this next slide gives us an idea, because the top 10 skills, the critical skills for the 4IR economy, are listed here: complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, coordinating with others, emotional intelligence, judgment and decision making, service orientation, negotiation, cognitive flexibility. And in fact, these things are best developed through experiencing and practicing the arts. What teaches emotional intelligence better than engagement with the arts, when you are literally putting yourself into the shoes of someone else? What teaches creativity more than the creative arts? What teaches critical thinking more? So these skills are absolutely fundamental. Now, the creative sector is in fact a very vibrant part of our entire economic system. Pre-COVID, the creative economy was contributing 1.7% directly to South Africa's GDP. But when you look at the multiplier effects within the economy, in fact, we could say that it was 5.6% of GDP. Here you can see the breakdown of the creative economy as an entire mapping. And this slide comes from the South African Cultural Observatory, who've been doing a lot of research on the cultural and creative industries. And what you can also see here is that pre-COVID, the creative industries economy was growing at a very rapid rate, faster, in fact, than the general economy. Of course, the creative economy has been very hard hit by COVID as well. We are one of the most vulnerable areas within the economy. But I believe by utilizing the strengths of the creative economy, the human capital that exists there, we have the potential to find the answers to both the education and unemployment crises. So in South Africa, we're very good at policies. In fact, we do have creative arts embedded into the educational policy, which is now called CAPS. You can see here, I'm not going to go into the detail, but creative arts is there across all 4 phases. It's compulsory for every child in South Africa to be receiving the creative arts up until the end of grade 9. And this curriculum has the capacity to address most, if not all, of those critical skills that I was mentioning earlier for 4IR. But again, as we see in many other sectors in South Africa, unfortunately, policy doesn't always equal practice. And in practice, we do have some problems in terms of the implementation of the creative arts in schools. So there's a lack of cohesive thinking around the implementation. Often our teachers are not properly trained in the creative arts. Artists, when they are brought into schools to do training, are not necessarily equipped to teach. Or else they are only very specifically focused on their particular discipline, and they are not sure how to teach a generalist curriculum. And then there's insufficient time in the curriculum for creative arts. And often people are deprioritizing it because they see it as less important. They do not make this very key connection to the critical skills that our country so desperately needs right now. So what can we do about that? And what, in fact, is Assetej South Africa doing about that, the organization that I run? We look at skills development and mentoring as a synergistic leadership development. The two are absolutely codependent. On the one hand, we are mentoring artists in how to bring their creative arts as methodology for educational purposes. We are mentoring teachers in using the creative arts confidently. And through them, we are mentoring children and young people in developing their full potential as human beings. We are providing the skills for those things to happen. And in the process, what that does is it creates an enabling, non-judgmental environment for learning. It builds confidence and empowerment, and it supports resilience, and very importantly, combats dropout, which is one of our biggest problems in the schooling system. At least 40% of young people who start school, or children who start school, will not finish. So we've got to deal with that particular reality. Now, how do we do this practically in terms of programs? We have our Kickstarter Educational Empowerment Program, which basically pairs teachers with artists over a 2-year mentorship cycle, where the artists are working with the teachers in the classroom to make sure that creative arts is happening in the most productive way on the ground in schools. And this happens through direct skills development and through the indirect mentoring process. Then secondly, we have our after-school game changer program. This targets all those people working in the after-school space, in the youth clubs, in the NGOs, in the extracurricular programs, and basically it upskills those young people who are delivering those programs in order to ensure that the critical skills of 4IR is what is happening in terms of the education of the learners. We also have a number of interventions which are about taking the arts into early year environments. And this is really important to stimulate our youngest minds, to make sure that we are developing critical and creative thinking from that very young age. So these would be part of our Theatre for Youth program, where we have productions that we support and we develop to tour into creches and kindergartens across the country. And here you can see another image of that. And in the process, we are also assisting those kindergarten teachers with the kinds of skills that they can use within their teaching environment. Now, I started with Kuleka Patuma, and I want to finish there because another one of our programs is Inspiring a Generation. It's an artist mentorship program. Kuleka was part of that program in 2016. There she is in America, because this was a program that not just mentored artists over a year to develop a new production, but also gave them an international exchange opportunity. The next year, she released that incredible volume of poetry, which has taken the world by storm. And you can read some of her words there from her poem, Woman. But most importantly, Kuleka has now started a mentorship program at 28. She started Black Girls Live, which is a mentorship program which is mentoring young artist creators to do what she has been empowered to do. And this goes back to Anastasia's introduction, that it's all about starting those cycles of paying it forward. So thank you for listening. And I hope that you can see that the arts do have a very relevant space in terms of skills development and mentorship.
Thank you so much, Yvette, and for sticking to time as we did do a dry run, because I think all of us here, are actually A-type personality. And yeah, you really kept to the time. But I love the angle that you introduced, but also to show the value of arts in the lives of the youth, because that is giving them a skill that, they can continue using and also make an impact to other people's lives. And just to mention as well, I'm a fellow board member on ASITEJ with Yvette, and we are really trying to do amazing work within this COVID structures as well. So you can also look at our website and see what we are doing as an organization. And then just see what role you can play in helping us to grow the arts. So without further ado, our next speaker is Dr. Bulani Molokwani. Doctor, you can just do a short introduction of yourself. Our bios will be posted by Beverly and the team. And just please push through on your topic. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for having us here this morning. I am Bulani. I'm a nuclear physicist by training who later went into environmental engineering. So I wear a few hats. I've worked in both fields. And there's an academic in me at heart. I continue to publish and write papers in the environmental engineering space. Today, my talk will be mostly on women in leadership, particularly in the STEM area, more the science, technology, engineering, maths, and innovation. I'll start by just saying, as girls, sometimes we are taught or made to believe that when you
Doctor, your pane is frozen. If you are having technical difficulties, please just text us on the group so we can then move on to the next speaker whilst you sort yourself out. I think because she indicated that they're having load shedding in their area. So I'm gonna then go over to Alice. Alice, can you please just step in and whilst Doctor is sorting out her Wi-Fi. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alice Lavemba. I'm from the South African Essential Oil Business Incubator, a niche market. Essential oils is so important in our daily lives. Everything that you have in your cosmetics and in your toiletry bags, perfumes, everything consists or have some sort of essential oils in it. Chair, would you like me to carry on with my presentation? Chair, would you like me to continue?
Please continue, Alice, as agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. As I said, I'm from the South African Essential Oil Business Incubator. I am just going to give you a brief overview of what we do in the skills and mentorship arena. Our tagline is promoting inclusive economic participation through incubation. That means when we say inclusive, that we look at everybody that could be excluded previously from the sector. We run different programs. This is
Alice, are you still there? Okay, because we all understand what is happening in the country, we have contingency, we always have a plan B in place. Doctor, has your generator kicked in? Are you able to continue? Thank you.
Yeah, apologies. I knew this was going to happen. I just wish the transition was a bit easier or a bit smoother, because now when the power disconnects, then this other one takes time to kick in, and I apologize for that. So back to where I had already started is as women, then we grow up thinking that you need to be reserved, you need to be very nice because you are a lady and you can't be bossy. And that creates some kind of timidness in the way we grow up as girl children. Whereas what the stat is showing right now is that organizations that have got a significant representation of women and other diverse leaderships on their boards, executives, and management level, they perform better. They support women, and they do continue to make sure that the system does not frustrate women. And they become companies and entities that assist women to really excel in their work with the understanding that there are a lot of responsibilities that women carry. There, there is a study that was done which shows that we actually enter the workforce equally to our male counterparts. But then the numbers starts to shrink as we go up the echelons of levels in organization. And entry-level first-time managers, there is a 30% drop of women that are promoted to the next level. And that says we really do not have a good feeder for women senior managers. They tend to be stuck in lower positions. The International Labour Organization did a study some years ago where they showed the benefits of gender diverse employee populations, where 60.2% of those entities report increased profits and productivity. And 56.8% report an increase in the ability to attract and retain talent. Because if I am not comfortable at home because I do not have at work, because I do not have the flexibility to be able to go pick up my kid or to be able to stay and work at home when they are not well, so that I can check on them during my lunch break in the other room, I'm not going to be productive. And unfortunately, that's the story of being a woman. 54.4% of those entities reported greater creativity, innovation, and openness. 54% of them, they report enhanced company reputation. I mean, you can just see that also should make sense, because we are the largest gender in the population worldwide. So if you have a population that is 60+% women, it makes perfect sense that you should actually develop them and give them environment that are conducive for them to be their best. When I focus specifically on careers in STEM, only 1 in 4 individuals working in the STEM area are female. It even gets worse when you break it down between the engineering and the hardcore science, and gets even smaller when you break it to color or race. Microsoft did a study in 2018 that says they concluded that the lack of female representation impacted on how girls and young women viewed STEM careers. With 31% of the girls believing that jobs that require STEM, programming, coding, engineering, and are not that enhancing, and appetizing, they don't really like them. However, that study also showed that in environments where people that are in the STEM careers take time to become role models, parental and teacher support, and make the career exciting, you see people that are in the field. When female scientists and mathematicians go out there and engineers mentor young girls, it shows that there has been an increase of, it actually doubled. The interest of young people interested in STEM doubles in such environments. And a bit of the benefits of building careers, especially women in the sciences or in STEM, is that they are fundamentally altering the way we live, connect, communicate, and transact. I mean, right now, it's a classic example of how technology has made life possible during the pandemic. We still can host conferences, we still can host meetings, we can still work, you know. On the other hand, the sciences and the tech or the STEM are key equitable economic growth because technological and scientific revolutions underpin economic advances. Of course, it means improved lives, improved health, improved education, improved infrastructure. Unfortunately, we have not really paid much attention to doing that, although as we do have plans that have put numbers to how many of the scientists or the STEM graduates we should train. We have not done very well. The lack thereof makes our country lag behind the countries like China and the Asian tech tigers. They have technically used science and technology to be the differentiators, to grow their economy and to tackle poverty effectively and becoming actually the key, the giants in the economy from where the countries like China started from. The one shortcoming that we have as a country, to Yvette's point, we've got plenty of plans and policies and legislation that is meant to promote the throughput into the STEM area. But we are horribly bad at making sure that we achieve that, we deliver on those. A small example is that we have planned to have at least over 75% of our PhDs by 2030 being in the STEM area. In 2010, we didn't even do half of what was expected for that year. We were supposed to produce about 5,000 per annum. In 2010, we have done only 1,400. So the road is still long, you know. The other thing that we're not doing well is that we do not have a coordinated mentorship program as a nation. Because once you have trained and educated people and they've got their PhDs or their degrees and their postgraduate qualifications in the STEM, they need to experience real work. I was fortunate because the program that I qualified under as a nuclear physicist had a mandatory 1-year placement in the industry. Before I could even graduate my master's degree, I had to be 1 year placed under a mentor in industry and have the real work experience rather than just the classroom and the experiments kind of experience. And I personally found that has really helped me. It made me a bit more confident and grounded when I started my job, with the challenges that I had of being one of the very few amongst very old workforce, you know, but the confidence that the 1 year that I was in a program working under a highly experienced old man who was very supportive just gave me an upper hand compared to most of my peers. And I think it has really done me so well, and I still continue to reap the benefits of that. So I am one of those people that really believe that mentoring is important. And as those that have been in that route, we need to support each other. You know, the same way Anastasia has started a program and work together to make sure that we bring as many of the young people into the fields, not just in the STEM, but in all fields. I also believe that there's a need to look at our education system a bit very different in such a way that we should not create the nerds, although they are needed, but creating hardcore engineers and scientists sometimes is not what the economy needs. We do also something that is not beneficial for us as a country. We have a disconnected and disjointed kind of training programs. We don't educate for what the country needs. We educate because it's a curriculum that has always been there. And therefore, that also contributes to the highest number of unemployed graduates that we find, because our universities are not feeding into the market what the market needs. And we need to really relook at that. The other part that I find is that I have been fortunate myself that I've been both in corporate and academia, and I continue to straddle both. The private academia and corporate. I find that being just the training in academia does not equip you for a life outside academia. You become just a knowledgeable, know-it-all, publish 101 papers per annum, but how you fit into the real world becomes problematic. I'm also happy that I think our National Research Foundation is starting to see that, because right now some of the calls for proposals they are making is actually they'll make a call for water research and call it water governance, because the one thing that we have missed is, as engineers and as scientists, is that we just focus on doing research and publishing. The Department of Higher Education also is not helping the process by rewarding the number of publications, because for every paper that you publish as an academic, you get paid, you get rewarded for that. And that's what will determine whether you become a professor or not. And as a result, the research does not look at the needs for the country. And this is in a country that we have limited resources. So in conclusion, I would say we need to stop working in silos and combine the efforts and have probably an integrated training program that includes mentorship and university training, and so that we can also be au fait with what the market needs, the industry needs, and train accordingly. And we need to commercialize what we have more, and support the innovations that we have. And I make an example of what we're faced with now, saying with COVID, it caught us napping. As a country, we lost our vaccination production capabilities a long time ago. I still ask myself, why, as a country that runs one of the largest ARV program in the world, not just in Africa, in the world, we still do not have the capability to produce our own ingredients, or even our active ingredients to start with. And that's something that we need to look at as a country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. P. You also said quite a mouthful. And just for the attendees, we will be wrapping up at the end, and each panel member is going to give their next steps, which are very pragmatic and what they think will assist the country to move us forward. And just to thank you as well, Dr. P, for being the patron of our Mentorship Academy. I know I can call on you anytime. Yes, you are very busy, and I mean, you serve on very important boards, but the fact that you are able to humble yourself enough, and to always make time to give me that guidance as to how we can improve this mentorship program, I really appreciate you. Next, Mr. Lavemba, can you please start with your amazing presentation? And please just check on the chat about timekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my guys are thank you, Chair. My guys are running around. They just started cutting some trees here on the farm. So we hope that they can just stop that for a while. Thank you, everybody. My name is Alice Lavember. I'm the CEO of SA Essential Oil Business Incubator. Our tagline for this year is promoting inclusive economic participation through incubation. I'm an entrepreneur in the agricultural sector. Our incubator is compliant with Agrisita, with labor, and basically making sure that we adhere to all the regulations that govern the sector that we are in. Essential oils is very important. People don't know much about it. It is not moody. It is in your toothpaste. It is in your cold drink. It is in your cosmetics. So it's a beautiful niche market. In 2011, I said that when I entered this industry, we have to transform this industry. Transformation is for us important when it comes to skills development and mentorship. Allowing people to own a part of the value chain was our driving force when we took over the incubator in 2011. Growing niche oils, in this case like essential oils, it was unknown to most of our people, especially the rural areas, the township areas. And, when you look at the role players, the laboratories, there was no black young people in the laboratories or machine operators in the agro-processing field, let alone the yellow machinery and all that. So for us, our mission was to transform this industry. We do have I hope everybody can see my slides here. Let me just great. So we do have several programs that we run. The one is an incubation program. We call it a producer development program, where we introduce producers to the essential oils, the art of growing essential oils. And that is everyone, whether it's young people, whether it's existing farmers, whether it is scientists, doctors, engineers, people that just want to learn more. We teach them and have a 12-month program and mentorship. They pay for their own program. We also realize that we allow farmers to get skin in the game. They must not just decide on depending on grant funding. And this program is called Earn While You Learn. Ladies and gentlemen, what is important for me, the person who is presenting the program is Robert Malachi. He came into COB as an intern from TUT as a crop productionist. Robert got introduced into management, young youth. I tagged him along into meetings, showing him how we decide how we make high-level decisions, encouraging him to be able to learn as much as he can, as fast as he can. Let alone, Robert is currently doing his master's in agriculture, and he's running this amazing program. He is going to become a PhD within the sector. He is under 35 and he's a real manager. So we have transformed, the production part of our business, and it is in the hands of young, dynamic people. Then we have a program where we develop our farmers to become producers, those who can and have the resources. This is Onika Nkwe. She owns a farm in Bronkhorstspruit. You could see there how she planted a rose geranium. This plant is rose geranium. Tell you a little bit about that. And Onika is one of the leading farmers in essential oils, especially rose geranium. There is no female perfume in a French perfume that does not contain rose geranium. Very high sought after oil. Onika went further and she created her own beautiful brand. This is what we have done. So she has gone from plant to product, and that is what we would like to see. So our farmers are becoming active players also in the cosmetic industry, mostly female farmers. So we focus on developing producers into manufacturers. Further creating downstream jobs. So she would employ some young people in the agricultural sector. If we can't take them in, our farmers are willing to host some of our interns. Then we have another program called Beauty and Personal Care. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, agriculture must feed into something, and beauty and personal care is just one of those things that absorbed essential oils. And you would not believe that last year we trained 10 young people into becoming beauty and personal care SMMEs, and this year we took in another 10 with the help of Department of Science and Innovation, ARC, CSIR, and TIA. And this is what we call manufacturer development. So we don't just make products, we show them how to make the products from our crops. It's also a 12-month skills and mentoring program. This one is managed by Kirsten Mount. She came in as a receptionist and have worked herself up while she's studying a BCom. She is also now mentoring other wannabes in the sector that we are here. And she's about, I think Kirsten is about 27 years old now. She's also she's also my finance manager. This is just what we have done with two of our youngsters. They came in, they pressed oils with their hands. Dudu and Orinile wanted to become SMMEs within the beauty and personal care. There we are when they graduated, ladies and gentlemen, and that's their products. It is barcoded and it is ready for the shops. What I like to share with you, how we focus on skills. We wanted to transform the science part of the agricultural sector, the niche part where we operate essential oils. And our first cohort was 3 young ladies that were last year in our laboratory. The one that remained, you won't believe it, was a national diploma analytical chemist. She is now doing her master's, and she is taking charge. Granny is taking charge of the laboratory, and she has other 2 students. So these guys are analytical scientists, but when they get into the workspace, they have never touched or really worked on any of the high quality and high level instruments. Our responsibility is to make sure that they are not just learning, but they're owning up. And the best student out of the next 3 will then manage our research and development team, and we will allow other students from TUT, especially TUT, to come in and to work on our equipment. But we teach and train scientists, workplace skills development. And we call that graduate placement program. It's a 10-month program, and they work with us. They have email accounts. They chat and talk to management, to suppliers. They are operating. They are not shadowing us. They get real tasks. If they leave our organization, if they can't be placed here, they will be an asset into the industry. We also have an internship program, and there we have 8 interns this year placed from via Agrisita. Not going to talk much about them. We also have agro-processing, and our manager or supervisor is Tumelo Machila. He came in as a day worker. Tumi is qualified as an agro-processor, and Tumi is 26 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, there's my team. My team, I'm 50 years this year. I've worked myself out of a position. My management team are all under 35, dynamic, and they are forced to be reckoned with within the essential oil industry. And that was my presentation for now. I will then join the group discussion later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Alice. You know, it's really endearing to see how you have taken, you know, this journey from, you know, being an incubatee yourself to actually growing, you know, the business, but not just growing it for yourself, but also taking people along, you know, and the world needs more people that do not have to hide behind lack of qualifications or degrees or, you know, or anything, as Dr. Molokwane had said, and we use our hands and we use our brains. As Dr. Sue said, you've got brains in your head, you know, you've got legs on your body, just choose a direction, you know, and this is just to inspire everybody that, I mean, you do not have to have a big plan. Start small, and with that starting small, identify those people. And my other motto really is your attitude determines your altitude. So you might have people with the highest qualification, but if they're not willing to roll up their sleeves and humble themselves to actually go down to the ground and learn so that they can be pushed up, and as they push up, then they must take other people along. So I salute you, Alice, and may you keep doing the good work that you're doing, and thank you for keeping time. Next, we are handing over to Mr. Mabeke, who will be talking about his involvement in skills development, the work of the CETAs, etc. Mr. Mabeke, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Anastasia, and greetings to all the viewers and listeners. And maybe just to start, I'm an attorney by profession. I'm a corporate attorney that specializes in corporate law, and part of what I do is draft legislation. I assist government in different departments, and one of the departments I've assisted in the past is the Department of Higher Education and Training in the development of the a governance framework for 20. Can you hear me, Anastasia? Oh, yeah. All right. In the development of the governance framework for the licensing period of 2011 for the 5 years that has recently been relicensed now in terms of the NSDP. So my experience in the skills development space, it's not only with the development of that governance framework for the Department of Higher Education and Training, including the standard CETA constitution that is now governing the CETAs, as opposed to what was the case before NSDS 3. And I've also been involved with the CETAs themselves, advising an administrator of one of the CETAs, as well as providing training in the different CETAs, where I've also provided services in different CETAs. So it is a space that I have knowledge, not just reading reports, but something that I can tell you what's right, what is not being done the way it should be. Now, my talk for today is about policies, the legal framework, and opportunities for employers and the youth. When I say employers, any person who creates a job is an employer. And it's a point that if we understand well, that point would not be having the unemployment rate that we have in the country, especially for the young people. Government operates through development of policies, development of legal frameworks, and what has happened in the past. In fact, I just want to just go through line by line. In fact, one line on 3 policies or strategies. In fact, there was National Skills Development Strategy 2, which was operational up until replaced in 2011. Part of the analysis in terms of how that worked was that the skills, the CETAs, in fact, were more focused in numbers, in counting the numbers in terms of how much money has been spent and how many people they have interacted with, without basically accounting for impact. The skills development is a matter of impact to the economy, and that could not really be justified. And the development of the NSDS 3 sought to correct that, to create economic impact without necessarily chasing the numbers. But in practice, CETAs later complained about them being chased to effectively, basically, whilst the document that you read creates a different impression, in practice, the situation is different. That we went back to apply the very same NSDS 2 in terms of what was being done. Now, from the 1st of April 2020, we have NSDP 2030, which is now 30, in fact, 10 years to review the SETA practice and governance. Now, just what the minister, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, when he launched the NSDS 3 said, he, amongst others, he said, we must also address the challenges of skills shortages and mismatches we face as a country and improve productivity in the economy. You know, and this was the promise that the NSDS 3 was meant to give. And unfortunately, that did not happen. As Dr. Mlukwane has also indicated, there's still that mismatch today. The education and training does not necessarily talk to the needs of the country to develop the economy. Now, with the launch of the NSDP, the minister, Naledi Pandor, now who was the Minister of Higher Education and Training, said the NSDP is key to enabling government and social partners to contribute towards economic growth, employment creation, and social development. The question is, do we have this? Are we able to address the skills challenges as we need to? You know, in the National Skills Accord, there are 8 commitments, 2011. There are 8 commitments. I will just pick up 2 that I consider critical. One is improve the funding of training and the use of funds available for training and incentives on companies to train. So this is one of the commitments. The other commitment is improve the role and the performance of the FET colleges that are now today called TVET colleges. This was a commitment to the National Skills Accord in 2011. And if you talk to young people who go to the TVET colleges today, they will tell you, you find some of them, they say, I finished 3-4 years at TVET college. Now I've been released to go and find experience that will then entitle me to get a certificate, which doesn't even make sense. So what's important is that those TVET colleges need to be linked or adopted by certain sectors of the industry, so that from small to medium-sized companies to big corporates, they must adopt a learner every year, so that these young people are in a position to be exposed to training and be mentored in what they are doing. I'm not going to deal with this. The law that governs the space is Skills Development Act. There are also grant regulations that deal with issues of skills as skills. But the law that deals with the collection of the money is Skills Development Levies Act. Some people will tell you there are problems with funding. And when you look at that funding space in terms of legislation, firstly, in terms of Section 27 of the Skills Development Act, every year, 20% of money is collected, the skills development levies. At least 20% go to the National Skills Fund. And the National Skills Fund is meant to spend that money on national priorities that are identified in the National Skills Development Strategy. The question is, what can be shown as the benefit if that money is not being redirected to create jobs, to get practically every employer to have a learner, to host a learner, to host an intern, to even provide for gainful employment. So this is one critical part. The other critical part that is relevant for funding is the exemption in the Skills Development Levies Act of 1999, Section 4A, that provides that the levy is not payable to any public service employer in the national and provincial sphere of government, which effectively means that the provincial and the national government are exempted from contributing. And this is a room where some of the monies can be received. Because when you look at how the skills development levies are collected. There's a portion of the employer, there's a portion of the employee. But what the country is missing is both when it comes to over 1 million people who are currently being employed by public service in the country. And that money would contribute a lot in a lot of things that need to be done. And now maybe the last point for me, Anastasia, is what needs to be done. I know I'm left with 2 minutes. What needs to be done? Firstly, the proper sector skills need to be done. And that needs to consider also the SMMEs. It must not just be the big companies that employ consultants. It must be people who understand the industry, who see the needs and the future. There must be pairing of every employer with at least one or more learners, for the relevant training and exposure. The sitters, as well as government broadly, must engage NGOs to assist the sitters to identify unemployed youth, as well as every business, even those ladies who sell food and magwinyas must be identified as part of the employers that could mentor. There must be a review of the Skills Development Levies Act, particularly those exemptions, to enable to release that money so that it gets to be part of the skills development system. And government, both at national level, provincial, up to the municipality, must provide a space to accommodate for interns, for apprentices, for learners, so that at the end of the day, we don't have a situation where we have municipalities that cannot deliver services because they claim not to have the necessary human resources. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mabete. And your comments that you're making are actually, I think, a bit concerning, but also they show that there are plans, but if you have a plan, you don't implement it, it remains just that, it remains a plan, and there is also a silo approach to how mentorship and skills transfer is being done. And also, as Doctor has also said, not everybody has to go to university. I mean, we need apprentices. We need people that use their hands to create, So even as parents, we need to start thinking differently about what we tell our children. Because I told my children they do not have to go to university. They can choose to do whatever they want as long as whatever they're doing is going to make a change in the world. So having a university degree is not the be all and end all. And that must really start from school. And I believe that also entrepreneurship should also be a serious part of school, because to teach somebody my age, in my 40s, to be an entrepreneur is harder than if you take a child who's still a sponge and you teach them, even like you're saying, to sell magwenya, to sell the stock sweets or whatever, but then they'll learn to count the rands and the cents. And that will also, because for me, the biggest problem is the begging bowl mentality. We need to remove that begging bowl. We do have hands and we do have skills that we can use, but it also starts with how our education system is positioned and ready to actually create entrepreneurs and not job seekers, because we cannot all be job seekers. Somebody needs to create those jobs. And small beginnings really are not a bad place to start. Do not despise them, because you can actually grow from there. So I know that our time is up. We literally have, 3 minutes, I guess, to just wrap up. I'm not so sure if Dr. or Yvette, you want to say anything, or Alice. Otherwise, I want to really invite everybody to contact us. Use our website. It's www.mashobaneadvisory.co.za. There's a WhatsApp button there and also a form. Send us any questions that you have, any of our panel members. If you've got a question for them or you want to be put into contact with them, we will gladly do that. I know that Alice and Summer host an organic market once a month. It's good to walk around the farm and see the products that are being made, speak to the entrepreneurs, so that we just need to have a different mindset. Let's not wait for government, because they cannot take care of all of us. We also need to try and do something for ourselves. I'd like to thank the Leadership Magazine, for reaching out to us, and also the Skills Development Summit team, for putting together this amazing, presentations. We have been attending all of the presentations, and I've learned so much. I feel like my head has actually grown, and it shows that there are a lot of ethical leaders out there. There are people who are interested in actually producing. But let this not be a talk shop. Let's get some pragmatic solutions. I thank you. Namaste. Handing back to you, Tabang.
Thank you very, very much. That was Anastasia Mushabane, Group CEO of Mushabane Group. And thank you so much to the panelists as well. We truly have noted pointers of engagement, and indeed action and collaboration is what will ensure that we propel some of these objectives forward. And thank you for bringing that home for us. Ladies and gentlemen, this leads us directly to our next panel discussion, which will be launching shortly after this. Stay tuned.
Public sector and need to understand more about the Public Finance Management Act or Municipal Finance Management Act? Do you know your legislative compliance requirements? Do you want to craft perfectly written minutes? Mashobane Advisory Services, via its training company, Mashobane Training and Mentorship Academy, offers training in the areas of director induction, minute taking, governance, risk management, compliance, data protection and privacy over and above the Protection of Personal Information Act, as well as diversity and transformation. The training is provided by experts in the field and takes a practical approach which adds value to the participants. Contact us for tailor-made training services.
Hi, my name is Renee Lelaka. I'm co-founder of Shared Glory.
And I'm Diruetsang Seletse, also co-founder of Shared Glory.
This is our marula oil range, which consists of 100% luxury marula oil, facial cleanser, and a facial cream.
Our products are great for skin because they are rich in vitamins A, E, and C, oleic acids, and amino fatty acids.
They assist in the production of collagen, great for all skin types, even acne-prone skin, because it's a very light oil and absorbs easily into your skin and doesn't clog your pores.
Our oil can also be used for hair, which absorbs also into your hair and nourishes the hair. You can also use it for an oil cleanse while doing your double cleanse with the cleanser and then applying your cream afterwards.
And also as a makeup remover, which is great. So,
yeah, and to find our products, you can go on www.shareglory.com, on Instagram at ShareGlory, as well as on Facebook at ShareGlory.
Inquiries at info@shareglory.com.
ShareGlory, bring out the glow in
audio. All right, we're just waiting for Dion, who'll be facilitating this panel discussion, and then Dion will
Breakfast Talks with Mashobane Advisory Services is a weekly
organization,
talk with
1 or 2
influential
sentiments
speakers
regarding
who are
the
leaders
theme
in their
and to
respective
ask
fields.
questions.
Join
Hi,
our
Dion.
Breakfast Talks every
Also,
Thursday
how are you?
mornings at 7:30 a.m. to learn from different topics presented by our expert speakers.
Good.
Whether
Okay,
you're on
Dion,
your
so
desk,
it's
in your
11:12
car,
now.
or in your
Unfortunately, our
pajamas,
previous
our
panel
breakfast
ran a
talks
bit
are
over.
thought-provoking and
So we've got
productive
about
use of
40
your
minutes
time.
for this panel. So
Breakfast
just by
Talks,
10
brought to you in
we can just
partnership
try
with
to
the Grow Room and
We
Sushi
all
Bar
talk fast,
in
so we'll be
Brooklyn,
fine.
Victoria.
I like that. Like your Hi, Mr. Williams.
Yes, hi, hello, how are you, Tabang?
How's it looking?
Hi, how are you?
So I think by quarter
Thanks.
to at 12 o'clock exactly, we're going to be load shedded. So everything's going to switch off completely.
That's fine.
And we still have to
The
say goodbye
Community
to everybody.
Enterprise
So,
Exhibition.
yeah,
Key question, why did we engage with the community? We always focus on the youth, we always focus on our students. But where do our students come from? They come from the community. And how can we grow communities where students see role models experiencing entrepreneurship? That led to our discussion in 2018 to say we need to look at combining community entrepreneurs. So today we are standing.
Thank you very much to Moshabane Group for really being one of our sponsors for the previous panel discussion and for leading that very well. And I'm so glad to learn that, some of the inputs that were shared, you guys are taking them, you're running with them, and you'll be contacting them. So I'm very, very happy. Please don't forget to visit our virtual exhibition online and also to hashtag Skills Summit 2021 on all social media platforms. Without further ado, allow me to then lead to the next discussion, which is skills development in the mining sector. And facilitating this panel is Ms. Dion Kiel, who's the CEO of Siaka Consulting. Dion, welcome, and welcome to your panel as well. Over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon or morning still, rather, everybody. We'll be moving along quite quickly today. A big thank you to our two guest speakers. Andre van Zyl joins us as the Director and Principal Consultant of SRK Consulting. He has more than 13 years in the mining industry, having previously worked for Anglo Gold Ashanti. And combining his engineering degree with his master's in financial economics and econometrics, he does extensive work in government advisory, mining company and project valuations, specializing in mining business development, decision-making, and mining conventions. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, thank you, dear.
We're also joined by Oggy Williams. He is the Associate Director for Inon Africa. He holds a master's degree in international studies and is currently doing his MBA. Passionate about Africa and the developments that drive growth on the continent, he advises in a number of areas, including energy, commodities, trade, and political developments. Welcome, Oggy.
Thank you, very welcome.
So this morning, we're going to chat a little bit about the skills development landscape. And skills development, a huge amount of pressure put on this topic of skills development as we see the emphasis that is placed on skills doing two things. First of all, making sure that business is able to meet its requirements for productivity and competitiveness in the market. And secondly, as a means to try and address our alarming unemployment rate. We're all aware of the fact that youth unemployment specifically under the expanded definition now sits at a staggering 74.7%. And the reality is that we are graduating our graduates in tertiary institutions into unemployment as it currently stands. And that skills gap really needs to try and meet and address the unemployment rate within youth. Titi, welcome. Let me introduce you quickly and thank you for joining us. Titi Molai is the Managing Director of Emore Mining. After qualifying with a BSc in Information Systems, he started his career as a business analyst and later becoming a management consultant. He's founded Emore Mining, whose aim is to invest and create value in African mining projects. Welcome, Titi.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw the questions out there because we're running on a very short timeline. The mining industry traditionally has been under enormous pressure to be a full solution for the communities that surround it. And with unemployment and COVID and the social uncertainty that exists as a result of those, probably even more pressure now. And we see mining contributing quite significantly to the success, if you can call it that, of our growth in GDP in the last quarter. So in even more an increasing pressure. Andrew, tell us a little bit about your experience of skills, the shortages and the dilemmas of the skills environment in that mining sector.
So, Dion, thank you for having me here. So I think one of the things that stands out over the sort of past 20, 25 years in mining is just how it's gone through cycles. And what tends to happen is as you go through a boom, then salaries increase, people come into mining. Obviously there's optimism, there's jobs that are created, and then you go through a dip in the commodity cycle, and you find a number of the senior people that move out. There are retrenchments, there's less employment, there are projects that get stopped, and people change countries, change careers, move into different economic sectors. And so you have pools of experienced people that leave the industry. And then as the next boom comes along, you find a real shortage of experienced people that understand what's required, that can supervise projects, and it's that whole sort of team of people that are required. You need the experience with the client, you need experienced consultants, you need suppliers. So it's that whole ecosystem that often you pick up. It's only when the boom comes again that you realize that there are gaps, and capacity has shrunk to sort of delivery of a single project, and all of a sudden there are 2 or 3 projects, and you find that you have a real shortage of skilled engineers, and you also have a shortage of people in key aspects like artisans, so boiler makers, fitters and turners, people that need to actually do the construction and the maintenance. So you find real shortages in those areas, and people in production roles move into projects for more money, and you struggle to fill production roles. So it is really it becomes very difficult to plan and to either produce effectively and safely, and also to execute projects on time and in budget.
Right. And tell me, Tsitsi, from an investment perspective, if we take a look outside of the operational model and look from an investment perspective, social stability, certainty, making sure that we're able to beneficiate in line with DMRE requirements, making sure that we run at optimal production capability, all of those things are important, right, when looking at the investment model. Do you think we've got the right skills in South Africa? Do you think that there's a disconnect? When you look at investment, do you see that we operate in an environment of certainty and stability and rich skills?
I think from a stability perspective, the country is relatively stable. But from the skills, you find that most of the finance skills sit with the banks. From a mining perspective. So if you're looking at finance skills, you get them across the board. There's a lot of guys who are qualified, but in terms of building models that are mining specific, you look into guys who have previously worked for the banks or even worked for the big mining companies. And talking about ESG, it's relatively new in the industry as well. So you have to find skills that are not available in the country that understand the requirements of ESG, and therefore highly overlooked in South Africa, and mostly in Africa as well. I mean, there's a lot of articles. An article that came out in Ghana now, talking about some of the dams that are, have been damaged environmentally by some of the gold exploration and gold mining. So definitely, from an ESG perspective, we're still lacking skills, and also from a finance perspective relating to mining specifically, we don't have a lot of skills available to build models, that works.
Which I think, it aligns with Andrew's comment about it's more than just the direct jobs that a mine employs. It's also about the consultants, the advisors, and the downstream and upstream businesses that obviously support the sector as a whole. Ogie, obviously we've got this huge push towards energy and renewable energy and the solutions that sit around energy and energy solutions. And it's interesting if we take a look at the coal sector and the notion of just transition and moving skills out of coal and mining and into kind of renewables and solar energy and the red zone, and all of these things are fantastic insofar as a master plan. But do you see that there is an integrated approach to saying, let's transition skills that we are ready and available and have skills available for that energy, for the energy industry and what it needs? Where do you see the alignment or not?
Thanks, Dion. I think building also on the comments that my fellow panelists have just raised, just generally speaking, if you look at the transition towards energy and if you look at how mining companies are operating in terms of available skills, a lot of the shifts towards aspects like automation and mechanization are a result of some of that shortfall. So the more the gap grows between the available skill set, the more likely it is that we're going to bring in supplementary equipment or machinery or any other devices, mechanized devices or automated devices that can facilitate and bridge that gap. It becomes a little bit tricky, building on Tsitsi's point about how do you actually then connect that to ESG, because the more disconnected that communities become from the operations of mining companies, especially the larger conglomerates that are able to finance upgrades in mechanization and automation, the less likely it is that they're actually going to be integrated into the value chain. So bridging that gap has to start right from grassroots, from even school level all the way through until you get out of university. It needs to be essentially built into local community culture, if you can say it. It's not about working on the mine as though you would in the olden day scenario of pick and shovel. It's more a understanding that there's a lot of value addition that's being drawn out of the mining sector, and that there's a lot of subcomponents of it downstream in the supply chain that actually there is space for participation. But that's not going to happen if we simply look to pull graduates out of our universities now. We need to be building that in place at a much earlier stage. If you look at ESG initiatives that the larger conglomerates are making, like Anglo American, for example, or even South 32 when they were still more active, you would see that, yes, they want to implement initiatives, and yes, they want to be able to say that it's had beneficial impact. But a lot of the feedback from communities is disjointed in terms of what's being put on the table and what they actually require. So there's a lot more need, I think, in terms of communication and engagement between the communities and the mining companies. And especially over the last year, I think quite a big shift has happened in that regard. We've seen, obviously, a lot of initiative made by the big mining companies in terms of supporting local communities through the coronavirus pandemic, which is really good. But the initiatives needs to be actually a lot more long-term in place, because now if they're setting up an expectation, it might be the same going into the year ahead. And what we don't want to do is actually miss the opportunity to start realigning, as you mentioned right at the onset of your point about the energy transition, because there's going to be a lot of new demand that's emerging, and it's going to be driven by other markets developing across the continent and across the world. And we need to be captured then 5, 6, 10 years from now, because otherwise we're going to have a disjointed supply chain across the entire board. And it's not only applicable to South Africa, but more broadly speaking, especially on the artisanal point that Andrew raised, it's across the entire continent.
Right. Andrew, so, I think which touches on the point that Oggy's made is we knew that mechanization of mines was coming, right? So we've been talking about it for several years. There was a goal set that by 2030 we needed to mechanize. I remember probably 7 or 8 years ago there being significant labor unrest, and specifically around comparative wages between South African mine workers and Australian mine workers. And the comparison being made to say, well, a supervisor on an Australian mine is an electronic engineer, whereas a mining supervisor on a South African mine is an individual who's grown through the ranks with limited education and is more a physical or manual worker who's proceeded through the ranks. And now we've got these targets in the DMRE mining charter about localization and 40% localization. There's an obvious opportunity that if we were, as we're retrenching on mines, and so many have, if we were reskilling people so that the machinery and equipment needed to run these mines in an automated manner was manufactured in South Africa as a connection to our localization program. If we start to look at automation and we start to look at outside of the machinery and the equipment, we're going to need more engineers, we're going to need a different type of skilled workers. So to Oggy's point, which is a longer term view, and there's been more than 7 billion rand is the number lobbied around invested in skills development. Do you think that the dots are connected? Is there a master plan that's coherent and makes sense that the industry is working towards?
So I think, one of the things to sort of keep in mind that there are a number of initiatives, and it's a combination of executive level people in mining have made huge strides in as I say, elevating ESG and looking at local procurement and understanding solutions to local procurement, but to actually go through the process of understanding the issues and then coming up with a strategic priority, and then actually making it sort of an operational level, a practical functioning system, where you can roll out something that works in practice. It is a difficult and time-consuming task. So I think I'm always torn between I see real progress made by mining companies and real strategic change and real, where we're no longer, where it's no longer just sort of whitewashing or greenwashing or whichever sort of term that you prefer, but where there is real meaningful change. At the same time, though, it is really difficult to roll out, and it's particularly difficult when you have such wild fluctuations in earnings. So one of the initiatives that was being targeted a while back was an actual test facility where new technology could be developed, it could be trialed, where there could be cooperation between manufacturers and mining companies, and you had a practical setting where you could actually test equipment. And then we had COVID, but it was a year or two. It took a couple of years to identify the correct location, to actually sort of get people on board, and then you have COVID coming in, and then that site is shut down and being used for other purposes. You've gone from companies making almost no money and looking desperately for ways to keep some people employed, and to now some companies making excellent returns and looking to develop projects. And this is all in a very short space of time. And in between this, you're trying to roll out meaningful local procurement initiatives and address gender imbalances and other transformation objectives. So it's a complicated environment, and it's one that changes quickly, and it's difficult to really sort of nail down a strategy that works.
Right. And while the pressures, it's like being in the middle of war and trying to plan for recovery, I guess, isn't it? Titi, your journey started in information sciences. I mean, not mining, obviously. Do you think youth in South Africa, we talk about Oggy's comment about it's not just about youth, it's actually about really developing rich skills and addressing some of the skills gaps that exist in the more specialized and technical areas. But, for youth, do you think that they see mining as a career opportunity, or is there still a stigma attached to it kind of being unsexy manual labor?
Yeah, I think mining has, been traditional for the longest time, and we find that when you're looking for skills, that you find most universities, they'll train engineers, and you have, other technicons training the less skilled labor who work, underground. From a data science perspective, from AI, I don't think we've made a lot of progress from a skill development perspective, and that's where mining is heading. So it's still a huge challenge to try and attract new and young people into mining. And I'll speak from an entrepreneurial perspective. You still require traditional skills that you get from university, from an engineering degree. To get into mining. So if you're like someone like myself who comes from the outside, it becomes very difficult to get in and bring in like different skill sets into the industry, because it's so traditional. So there is room and space for young people to be more creative around mining. Andrew spoke about how mining is so cyclical. We lack long-term planning in South Africa and in Africa, because we know that in the mining industry is, it's related to the commodity pricing, and that the cycles depends on what happens in the economy. But from a long-term perspective, the mines lose money, but they also make money in commodity booms. We haven't done a lot of exploration, for example, in South Africa. There's a huge gap trying to find extra resources. We might be lagging a little bit behind from battery storage and EVs. We have Bushveld Minerals pushing vanadium. We're looking at lithium. Do you have lithium? There's cobalt that probably passed through the country from the DRC to the export market, but we're not doing much of beneficiation, even though those commodities go pass through the country. So we need a lot of young minds and thinking and research and development into the new world as well, and that talks back to the point I was making earlier around planning, long-term planning around mining, so that when these things happen, we are prepared and we have longer-term goals that we're trying to hit, and that will also introduce other skills outside of the traditional skills into the industry.
So, and Ogi, so, I think that Andrew earlier spoke about very similar issues to what Titi's talking about now, which is that the industry is cyclical. It kind of runs up and down, and trying to plan ahead and budget ahead when one isn't sure, nobody has the crystal ball, or the accurate crystal ball rather, that kind of justifies what the market's going to do. How do we compare to the rest of Africa? Is there a model in Africa that we can learn from, or are we really sitting at the forefront of being in a position where we could guide or influence the model for making sure that Africa as a continent has the right skills to maximize on its mining resources?
I think it's important to take the commodity cycles into account, Dion, as my fellow panelists have mentioned. It's the case of us being prepared enough and flexible enough so that when the boom does come, we can simply increase capacity. If there is a downturn in that same boom, we can downsize that capacity, redeploy the available skill sets that we have so they're not sitting idle or essentially moving on to another entirely different industry, like what Andrew mentioned right at the onset, with there being almost an exodus, especially at the higher levels of corporates. So in my mind, we have to be, going on to your point about Australia, I just want to come back to that and also tie it into an example that I was thinking about as everybody was discussing their various points. If you look at Australian mining in comparison to places in Africa, yes, it's a lot more mechanized and a lot more automated. But what we should actually be looking into is, why are they automating it more and more? Because there's fewer and fewer people working in the Australian mining space. It doesn't employ nearly as many people as our own sector. And yet it's considerably more automated. And if you look at the type of processes and systems that are embedded in that mining space, it's very technologically driven. And you see some application here in Africa in that regard. I believe the first fully automated gold mine is in Mali. It was set up in probably about a year or so ago. So if you look at that, it's already happening. And also in Africa, it's already been happening. And I think here, South Africa, we're a little bit behind in that sense. I'd like to go back to the point about, how do you ensure that there is throughput of skills coming through the universities so that you do have an available pool to work with. And something that's over the course of the last couple of years in doing my own studies on my MBA, one of the big examples that's always stood out to me is this test that they essentially perform. It's like a litmus test for managers. They get them in a group, in a large class, and they break them up into little groups, and they give them what they call the marshmallow test. I don't know if anybody on the panel has heard it, but just as a quick recap, you basically get a string that's about a half a meter long, some duct tape, also about half a meter, about 6 pieces of spaghetti that are hard, and a marshmallow. And you're given 15 minutes to try and build a tower popping the spaghetti, the marshmallow on top of the spaghetti. And bear in mind, inside MBA classes across the world in the top universities, you got some pretty smart minds. So once they had done the initial run, and they've compiled some data from aggregate group settings where this experiment is basically being held, they found some interesting trends. For one, the most the most clued up guys and the best structured platforms are naturally those by engineering students. The guys with the engineering backgrounds have that ability to think out of the box and look at it from a perspective of how does the system need to work in order for us to get the marshmallow on the top. Across the other, all of the other candidates across various industries, everybody performed at different levels. But the most interesting finding of the entire study is that when you put the exact same experiment in the hands of 6-year-olds, they actually perform a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than you would if you put it in the hands of 35-year-olds. By the same token, you got to start asking the question: how is it possible that a group of 6-year-olds, is able to put together this tower quickly and efficiently, better than those that are actually 20 years more experienced naturally and have a lot more knowledge than a 6-year-old? And what they found is that the reason why they're a lot more efficient and are able to get through the work is because they sit, they look at the problem, and they test. And if something works, they each complement one another, and they start building on top of each other's essentially efforts. Whereas in the older cohorts, you find a lot more discussion, a lot more debating, a lot more, well, maybe this will work, maybe this won't. And then they try and calculate the theory rather than actually putting it into practice. Obviously, we're all trying to account for risk and trying to minimize that. If we take that exact same concept and we transpose it onto the mining space, right? Why is it that we are not looking at 6-year-olds at primary school and putting a remote control in their hands that's able to pilot a little truck? And over the course of a year or whatever the case may be, they are being tested on how well they can remote operate this little truck. It's a very easy thing for a child of age 6. It's almost like a no-brainer activity. They will be excited. They will be interested in it. But down the line, you can start scaling that up to a 10-ton truck. It actually moves a lot more weight than a little scaled model. It starts with little ideas like this in my mind. We've got to be embedding them inside our schools so that it does make it look more enticing to be in a mining space. Because right now, in my mind, the view would be still the same old school shovel and pick. You're going down on the ground with a helmet on your head and a light on your forehead. So if you have that mentality, there's never going to be any progress. Everybody's going to try and exit out of the sector, and then we're going to fully automate it, and we're going to have a 400,000 shortfall problem in terms of employment. That's actually going to be a lot bigger.
Right.
I can go on this example quite a bit.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point about us moving towards an environment where we're becoming more disconnected with our communities, which is significantly risky in any sector, I guess, but more particularly in mining. It's interesting. I have a 17-year-old son who I have to peel him off the screen to get him away from his bloody thumbs, which move all day around these games and things like that. So we've been talking about careers, and I said to him, did he think about being a drone operator? He could be specialist in the mining industry or those kind of industries to health and safety and those kind of things. He looked at me as though I was completely smoking my socks. The disconnect between the technology of today and the youth of today and what their natural thinking and abilities are versus and how we apply that in traditional sectors, there's possibly not that dialogue, there's not that link yet as to how we use more sexy industries and learning and development in the more traditional industries, I guess. Tell me, Titi, in your I think that it's a chrome mine, if I'm not mistaken, that you purchased recently. What are your challenges in finding the right skills as a mine owner?
Okay, so we acquired it's actually a fluorite project in Namibia, and you find that we struggled a bit in finding local senior geologists to do some of the reconnaissance work, some drilling program in Namibia, because you find that most of the the big South African companies are already have enough projects that they have running with. So in order for a small scale miner or a junior miner, it's very difficult to find the right skills, also at the right price to work on greenfield projects. And as you might know, most of these greenfield projects are self-financed because you don't have institutions like the DFIs in South Africa who don't fund early stage projects. So you have to be at least at your PFS or DFS stage of the project to get some sort of financing. So it's a double whammy. You don't have the money and you also don't have the skills to help with the project. I think that's where innovation comes in. How do we find better ways? You mentioned drones. How do you find better ways and cheaper ways of doing geological work on mining projects without spending a lot of money? And how do you get newer skills into the mining space? As I said earlier, we don't spend a lot of money into exploration, and we haven't done in South Africa for the past couple of years, as compared to other countries. And in order to grow the industry, we need to find new resources, and the sooner we do that, the sooner we can employ more people. So, like I said, it's also a double whammy because you don't have the skills to do the exploration, and you also don't have government support or money to put it into those exploration projects. So it is kind of tough, but we get along. We're trying to get things done. We use the little that we have to get the project going, and we're hoping that we'll find even outside of the country solutions to help us with building feasibility studies for some of these projects.
Andrew, it's okay. I mean, I look at the business profile. You are advising in environmental and earth solutions. I quite like that, across 20 countries, if I'm not mistaken. how is the rest of the world dealing with this? I mean, it can't be a uniquely South African issue. I understand we have a much larger youth population than elsewhere in the world, but the depth of skills in a very quickly changing mining industry, very quickly mining has become less about extraction and more about environmental issues, social issues, governance, that whole ESG conversation and alternative technologies. How does the rest of the world deal with this?
So interestingly, I mean, I think so we keep track with. I think we have something like I think we're in 35 countries or something at the moment where we have offices, and we engage with each other fairly often on and also on things like exactly what you mentioned now, where how do we embed ESG into all of our disciplines, because it's not something that one can tack on at the end. I mean, there was an example the other day where I think the new Equator principles require you to have considered alternative energy sources and explain why you didn't choose the one with the lowest carbon footprint. So you sit with this thing where we talk about skills development, but here, not only do I need an experienced electrical engineer, but I need an experienced electrical engineer who's also up to date with developments in hybrid power, who's also up to date in the calculation of carbon footprint, who's also aware of the fact that the Equator principles have changed, which is something that's not technically in his field. He didn't, so we have, so as I say, you have that challenge of you have to find somebody who has experience and as a pure engineer, but you also have to find somebody and create a culture around them where people want to keep learning. Where people are, take an interest in the fact that ESG rules are changing, that approaches are changing, that technology is developing, that it's not just enough to know how to design an electrical supply system for a shaft, which in and of itself is complicated, but you also need to design it and consider different power sources and how that carbon footprint and then take into account local procurement and local supply chains and address gender imbalances in your workforce, all while doing all of these things. So it's so I guess I would say to people that if you're looking for a challenging and exciting career, it is certainly challenging. And if you can try and find a way to feel like you're getting on top of things, you could be mistaken, but you may also then sort of be meeting the challenge. So those are the things that we're looking at, and I think in South African setting, and in African mining generally, we've pioneered a lot of the social engagement strategies. We've done really good work trying to understand resettlement, and more so than much of the developed world, where very little mining actually takes place. So in lots of ways, South African and African mining is at the forefront of many of these things. And we focus a lot on the negatives, but a lot of really good knowledge and skill has been developed locally.
Right. Tell me, Augie, if we take a look at government investment in skills development, and I'm not talking about our state of education, it's not a political conversation, but we have these employment incentives, we have the youth employment, we've got tax rebates, we've got CETA rebates, we've got CETA direct investment, the National Skills Development Scheme. A company in the way in which skills is structured in South Africa can claim realistically around 65%, but actually up to 110% of its investment in skills development back. And then we've got commerce, which according to the Minerals Council has invested about 6 to 7 billion rand in the mining sector. Would it be accurate to say perhaps that there is insufficient collaboration between the government policy and objective around skills and what business needs, and that there needs to be greater collaboration politically and commercially between business and government in South Africa to achieve the objective?
Well, I guess $1 million question in that sense, Dion, but I don't necessarily think it's about funding. I mean, yes, it's important that there is financing avenues in order to get projects and bankability of projects. But again, we're talking about what do you have available to work with? If government is putting a lot of incentives on the table for companies to get as many of their employees locally, or to staff their company as much as possible from local sources and to build supply chains locally, they have to again look at it. Is there the available skilled pool of people that are going to be able to execute all of this work? And if the answer is no, then it doesn't matter that you're putting all of these incentives in place. The companies that are essentially looking at that proposition are saying, well, we're still going to be in the same position. In fact, we're going to end up investing more. It's kind of like saying you can build on a particular area if you've got the requisite permits, but at the same time, you need to build a road that goes out of that area. And you need to build traffic lights that regulates the throughput of traffic in that area. So I don't necessarily think it's about financing. I think it's more about the culture of how you view the sector. And again, that's why I go back to the more simple examples of how do you actually make this an engaging avenue to pursue work opportunities. And I'd like to raise just the most important one that's been on the radar for quite some time, and that's artisanal mining. It's across the entire continent. In some countries, it's up to as much as 50% or even more contribution in terms of how much of the materials or minerals are exported. I know Ghana, for example, is at the forefront in that regard, with almost a third of their production coming from artisanal contributions. If we take a look at that by itself, right, and if you had to compare the potential of that space, it's considerable, but you have to layer it with skills development in the context of how do you actually participate. I think Andrew mentioned that point about the environmental impact in mining in Ghana as well, if I'm not mistaken, or you mentioned that, but it is a very real thing. And we have seen it in other spaces, especially in the oil and gas sector. Nigeria is probably the biggest, most prominent example, but Tanzania as well, where there's a lot of regulation around the space from a perspective that is going to be environmental degradation. And again, how do you mitigate that from a ESG perspective, locally drawing on skill sets when they're just not available? So in my mind, I think that there is a bit of a disconnect between how government is setting up policies and what they're looking to incentivize versus what's actually needed. And we should look to draw on examples from one another in Africa and how we're tackling, especially the incorporation of artisanal miners into the formal supply chains. And a lot of it has to do with technology. Again, referring to my previous example, in Africa is massive. It accounts for probably 80% of all vehicles on the road. And the reason why it does that is because there's cheap imports from across the world that you can bring it at a fraction of the cost. But the most interesting thing about that is it's not the cheap cost that's drawing the consumers to buy it. It's the ability to be able to tinker, fix, to work around that component, knowing that you can make it to your liking. So if we had to put technology in the hands of more of these artisanal miners, and let the natural course of progression of learning and developing your own skill sets by using that technology, I think that you'll find a lot more connection across the value chain. And then when some government does put something on the table, there are going to be a lot more feasible options.
Right. Thank you.
That would be my take on that particular perspective, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Ogi. Titi, can we have your finishing words? Give us what does the future look like? What do the solutions look like?
I think the future is, really bright and great for mining. If you look at, as Ofi was saying, the value chain of mining, from pit to pot, there's so many opportunities. If I start at the end, looking at mining logistics, we have backlog at the moment in the country, from rail to warehousing. There's opportunities there to build new solutions to get us to get more product out of the country. Before then, that part of logistics, there's also beneficiation. It's been talk of mining endeavors, beneficiating the minerals that we mine. So there's opportunities there to beneficiate minerals in our country, but also in our neighboring countries. We know that DRC has got all the minerals you can think of in the continent or in the world. And there's an opportunity to, beneficiate, some of the minerals in our neighbors in our country. There's energy solutions. There's ESG. There's even, some guy who's looking at mining the moon. So the opportunities in mining are endless. And I would encourage young people to learn a little bit more, outside of the traditional mining. There are a whole lot of opportunities that are great, that are exciting. Including a 17-year-old. So maybe he might be interested in mining the moon.
Yeah, I'll put him in touch. Thanks, Titi. Thanks very much for your time. I know you have to log off. Ogie, your finishing words?
I think, again, Dion, we need to be embedding the view that the mining sector has got a massive contribution to make, not just to the local economy, but to the global one. If we look at how many minerals are coming out of Africa alone, like what Andrew was mentioning earlier, we account for the bulk of them. Aside from a few other places in the world, the most developed mining sectors are here in Africa. So what we need to be doing is aligning with the transition, especially in terms of energy. As the demand for new minerals picks up, we need to be prepared with appropriate technology to be able to mine those minerals cost effectively, while also bringing in a suitable and skilled supply chain of human resources. And then also at the same time, the downstream aspect of adding more value to each of the minerals that we are actually exporting is necessary. Because if we create that entire value chain and we're actually housing it here, the opportunity for us to really maximize the contribution of the mining space is exponential in my mind. It's like I say, the disconnect is too big at this stage. And I would go to grassroots levels. I would try and structure curriculums and systems in those places where communities are dependent on mining companies for employment, but not only from the perspective, like I was saying, pick and shovel. Start embedding those more niche skills and technological aspects within the curriculums now. If you have to put a smartphone in the hands of an 8-year-old, 10 years from now, they'll have even less. What am I saying? A year from now, they'll have that thing unpacked more than you and I or anybody on the panel. So do the same with all other digital technologies and start integrating it. That would be my biggest recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Ogie. Andrew, your finishing words for us, please.
I'll keep it very short for the sake of Tabang, who's nervous.
Yes.
Energy is going to drive so much of energy, and decarbonization is going to drive a lot of mining demand, and it's a lot of the challenges in mining. And how we integrate that in the sort of broader ESG space and within the sort of society at large is a big part of how we'll be judged as successful or not.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much, both of you, for your time and your incredible contribution. And hopefully we've given everybody a little bit of food for thought in trying to come up with solutions to what is such an important topic for us to drive South Africa's agenda forward. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dion. Thanks, Ogie. Thank you, Tabang.
Thanks, Andrew. Nice meeting you. Thank you, Tabang.
Nice start. Bye.
We'll be meeting next year, same time, same place, bigger and better. Hopefully we would have all been vaccinated so we can meet live, but we do appreciate all our sponsors who have come on board: TIA, Mochabane Advisory Services, and you know, there's too many sponsors, so we can't go through a list of all of them, but thank you so much. Most importantly, thank you to Cape Media for deeming us fit to be participants of this kind of event. And most importantly, thank you to all of you, the delegates and all the panelists and the speakers that made sure that this event is a success. May we continue to rely on the market and soar even higher as the eagles that we are. May we continue to provide solutions to problems that are in industry. May we charter forward and understand that skills development relies on us to be pioneers and to make sure that the change we want to see, we take responsibility of that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I am signing out, and I say the sky is not the limit. It is only the starting point. Thank you for tuning in and for being with us in the Skills Development Summit. Until next time.